that we didn't have any software model that could actually do the packet processing. And this time we want to start with something that can actually run the same traffic, although at lower loads, and provide the standard of the behavior for this kind of pipeline, which is Dash. Right now, we want to do the communication between VMs. In the future, it will, of course, as Dash will grow and mature, it will also include other pipelines like load balancing, maybe more stuff like NAT and other things. But we need to start somewhere, so we are starting with the VM to VM or VNet to VNet communication, which includes things like mainly VNet routing and connection tracking. And also like we kicked off HA, as you may already know, but it's far from being in the behavioral model. It will take some time to get there. So right now the focus is on VNet to VNet, and we have a very, very basic scenario for doing the VNet routing, which includes for now IPv4 with TCP. So we have, and also some functionality missing. So we have kind of directions to grow the behavioral model in, let's say, vertically by improving the stuff that we already have, as well as horizontally by adding right now more protocols and in the future more functions. So here we have a list of different things that are still missing from the behavioral model. By the way, there is a README file that I will post a link to that explains how to use a behavioral model. It is pending on merging my pull request. I will merge it today, and I will send you a link on how you can set up the behavioral model and how you can run it. So if you have any problems with that, you can reach out to me, and we can do more changes, more fixes to it. But with regards to two things, the implementation of Dash pipeline, which is the P4 code, and the improvements to the compiler and the simulator so he can actually do all of the expressions that we have, like, for example, connection tracking, which is only available in PMA, for instance, which is not really supported by the simulator. So all these areas are up for improvement, and this is what this list of tasks consists of. So we have right now how many? 13 of them. So probably let's go one by one. I will explain what they are about, and you can probably sit on that for some time and decide what are the areas that you would like to participate in and to provide further contributions to this project. So first two are quite simple. It's UDP and IPv6. Yes.
So before we get started on the list, right, can we talk a little bit about the behavioral model so we have an understanding, right? So this is the same P4C behavioral model that you took and you are trying to add and then enhance, right?
Yes. So you can find it in the behavioral model itself. The code for behavioral model is, give me 1 second, I will post a link to it.
I know some of those locations. Maybe
it's just for everyone.
Yeah, just for clarification, right? Couple of clarification questions, then we can go through the list, right? And then that's one, right? So there is a P4, and if you have your own P4 code, P4 toolchain gives you a way to create a behavioral model, configure it, send some packets and test it, right? So that's there a while back. And then on top, the very first thing would be a psi.p4, right? That would make a psi underlay. And then You have another set of P4 code that will give you the VNet to VNet communication. Ignore the connection tracking and all those details later, but there is that comes and gives you an overlay on top, right? So can you talk a little bit about the SI, P4, BM before we look at, hey, how do we take the...
So SI is just an API. So for those who are familiar with the P4 language initiative, you know that they have their own, let's say their own API standard, which is called P4 Runtime. And it is used for configuring your pipeline after you compile it to some backend. So in our case, the backend is BMV2. And when you compile it, you can use P4 Runtime to configure the pipeline to populate the table, so the transformations of the packet will be done according to those rules. What we need to do is to align it with the Sonic approach. So Sonic is using SI APIs, and we need to define a new set of APIs based on the P4 code for how we can configure our our DPU. So in order to do that, we decided not to have like two different things to support. We want to only focus on the P4 code, and everything else will be generated based on that. So today you can find that the P4 code, as I mentioned, keeps the VNet routing tables, it has the ACL tables, and so on. And for every of those tables, there is a SI API generated. So this is already available. With
Sorry to interrupt, Marian. Yeah. So, but before I get to overlay, how do you see the underlay, right? Do you see it as SI.P4 and then compile and generate the behavioral model that is supporting, let's say as my first step, that, and then add additional...
Well, underlay is very minimal. Underlay is very minimal in our case because there is really no underlay routing, nothing like that. So we have a few objects that we will need to support to define maybe some fields in the package like the neighbors. In the future, we will also need mirroring, policers, and stuff like that. But right now, underlay is just a set of global values that you provide to your DPU, which is the IP address of the appliance itself, the MAC address of the appliance, and the MAC address of your neighbor or switch. So this is currently all of the underlay that we have. So it's not really...
Yeah, I think, one thing is I think what Venkat is, Venkat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to basically ask the question in terms of how are you going to generate the SI APIs for the underlay, much like how we are basically trying to generate the SI APIs for the overlay using the P4 models. Are we taking the same approach? But my understanding is that since for the underlay, the SI API is already defined. And as Marian mentioned earlier, that, hey, the approach we took for underlay, which is essentially Sonic, is that we define these Visio diagrams, and then from there we essentially, define the APIs. But we have taken a rather different approach in Dash, which is to say that, okay, start with the P4 model instead of Visio diagrams and topology diagrams and so forth, and then go ahead and use the P4 model as a source of truth to define the SI APIs.
For overlay for overlay, that makes sense, right? I'm just trying to verify if for underlay also, do you start with a SI.P4 and get to a behavioral model, or you just look at it as a SI blob and then don't go into the underlay and you keep building a smaller model without getting into through the P4 model?
As far the model, you are talking about the basic.P4. So that one, it's all combined in the data plane.P4, right? It's underlay and overlay; those are all combined. So your pipeline will have all those things when you define. I don't think so. They took something from the switch.sai.p4, so they are rewriting that from the scratch. The pipeline itself, it will cover both underlay as well as overlay. From the underlay overlay, so what
but the difference,
what I understood was right now based on this conversation just now. So right, so this SAI API alone for the underlay, whatever tables already exist, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are just taking those APIs from the SAI community already, and whatever is not available, we have to make sure that it gets compiled and automatic SAI APIs are getting generated for the tables or new things we are defining right now.
And they are essentially the subset of all the APIs for the underlay. They are not all the APIs. It's just whatever is
that is correct.
Smaller subset. Yeah.
That's correct. So the difference is that, we have some P4 code included in Dash pipeline right now for underlay. The difference between P4 code for underlay and P4 code for overlay is that for overlay, we generate APIs based on P4. For underlay, probably some manual stitching will be done to standard SAI APIs to be able to program those tables. And it is just a subset of today's SAI.
Okay, so I can summarize and see, you correct me if my understanding is right? There are two ways of doing it. One could have been a full-blown or even a partial SAI.p4 and a behavioral model. And to that behavioral model could have worked with another behavioral model for overlay, which comes from the series pipeline.p4, right? That's not the approach we are taking. We have a single P4 from which we generate partial. Some tables are underlay and some tables are overlay, and the behavioral model will cover the whole thing. There's a single behavioral model.
Behavioral model covers everything, right? But we just don't generate APIs for underlay because we already have them.
Yeah, makes sense. And that you will use a regular SAI interface, and then whereas for the overlay you would want to use there also you want auto generate SAI APIs so that they somehow you code them and back them, kind of you have to write a glue layer to P4 runtime, right?
Yeah, that's what we are doing right now. Yeah.
Okay, so, got it. Understood. Yeah, thank you.
Marian, for the underlay that you are showing, it's all existing APIs, no change for the Dash, correct?
Yeah, we do not plan any changes for Dash.
So for the overlay, based on the various stages we have in the P4 code, we will be defining ingress, all 3 ACL stages, egress, and then everything, and then based on that, whatever the SAI API generator Python script that you have, it will basically look up all the tables and actions and everything, and then it will give us the .h file, the SAI API .h file, correct? Okay, thank you.
Hey, Marian, on the list of those 13 items, I have a quick question before you start going one-on-one. I know that now that you have been interrupted, I just have a question.
No problem. Yeah, go ahead.
So hopefully quickly, considering this all basically is, it's all targeting for the VNet to VNet communication, as you mentioned. Considering that, do you not think that we should also track for HA as well in this, or do you think that that's actually a separate item?
Oh, I would say it will be here, but later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think this is not a complete list.
There are 7 categories. This is just the first, and it's not VNet to VNet. It's actually VNet to everything. VNet to internet, VNet to storage, VNet to everything. So we have defined in the document the 7 services that we want. This is the first. And then when we get to HA, it will result in this being updated. And we have, Excite's been working on that in the background as a separate parallel exercise. And then that will come in, when the community gets more done there. And yes, this model will have to be updated once we have the HA all documented and the community agreeing on the approach. So this is just the first of many.
This one right
here. Sounds good. So the next thing is basically on the fragment handling, right? Why are we basically talking about fragment handling on the connection tracking only? Should it not be just, on its own to say that, okay, we do need to handle fragment handling whether we are doing connection tracking or not connection tracking, right?
In practice, that's not really true. So when you can't accept the fragments without having the connection. So we have talked about this, and you have a connection, and then you have temporal connections, which means they're temporary. Every time you receive a fragment, you have to do things in a slightly different way, and they get timed out very quickly because we don't. It's not like timing out a connection. You can't just send some fragments and leave it dangling. So we have proposals for that. We've given those proposals in writing to Mellanox, and they are part of the connection. You have to have a connection push. You can't have fragments without a connection, and connection always precedes fragments.
Okay. Okay. So the last thing that I just want to ask about, all these 7 use cases that we talk about, when you basically zoom into that, what we really see is that essentially these are really talking about how we handle slow path behavior, right? However, when it comes to fast path, it's essentially common across all of them, because once the flow is set up, essentially it is the common part. So
it's sort of, except for in the common part, if you look at the forwarding table documentation, that there's all kinds of things in the forwarding table that actually, do need to be supported for these 7 services. So if you were thinking of the common thing as VNet to VNet, no, it's more than that. The forwarding table has to be able to handle all 7 services, which means all different types of encapsulations and behaviors depending on which service. So in a simplistic way, yes, but it's not quite that simple.
Okay, so in other words, even if we define a fast path behavior model right now, it'll continue to evaluate as we basically bring in more use cases.
Yeah, so we try to account for the use cases that we know. So the document that we have where the forwarding table is defined, it tries to account for the 7 services. However, just remember that those 7 services are what is needed for Microsoft's cloud and nothing more. But for the enterprise, there may be more. We can't account for what we don't know. So as more services are added, over time, of course, the forwarding table may have to be, or how that works and the behaviors may have to change. So there's always a chance in the future that we have to update it with the new services. So we're trying to account for it, but obviously we can't account for the services that Google might want, or IBM might want, or Dell might want, or we build an outpost like appliance and we need some new thing there. Like it's definitely going to change over time.
Okay.
So the base is the base of what we know, and then it will be updated.
Got it. Yeah, thanks a lot, Gerald. I think that does it from my side. So Marian, please continue from the beginning.
Yeah, so probably we can go to the list of tasks.
Okay,
next.
Here we are. So the way I divided them, just FYI, Marian, anything that you said was connection tracking, I just prefaced it here. And then anything that wasn't connection tracking, I left it without the preface on the front. FYI.
I couldn't
I can
get
change
into this call because I had to reset my computer. But did you guys discuss? I just got off the phone with Francis Matteau, and he told me that as of within the last couple of days, that Mellanox agreed to use the P4 connection state tracking model from Panzando. Is that your understanding, Marian, or do we have that agreement versus using the open source, converting it to P4?
Yeah, so actually we reviewed it with Mario, who is the author of the pull request. Seems like with the few more things that are currently under discussion in the PNA community, we will be able to accommodate for the future use cases as well. So what we decided to do is to work on the compiler and simulator support for this PMA model proposed by Panzando. Yeah.
Okay, can we at least have the job it has to be as complete or better than the model that we got from the Linux community. Do we know that?
Again, can you repeat? I didn't understand.
You remember we were talking about using the model from the Linux community?
Yeah.
So we need to at least check and make sure that it is as mature or it covers all the same bases that that does or more. If it doesn't, then that's a problem.
Mario's on the phone,
I
Gerald.
think we're gonna do it in a slightly different way. We want to merge the initial version and then add improvements according to all the use cases. But we want to have at least something working in simulator, and then we can improve.
Yeah, but we should be able to compare it to the code that we already got.
Compare, yeah, for sure.
Because that's not a very long piece of code. We should be able to compare that. It's at least covering all the same cases.
Yeah, but the problem is that not everything can be expressed even in the PNA right now. So that's the bigger problem.
Well, then that's a problem. So, I mean,
yeah, but it just requires more work on the simulator and the compiler. It's not like we just don't have everything from day one.
When are we expecting to have everything done? Like, I don't want a model that doesn't reflect reality for, I mean, all our test cases are going to be against the model. So how long does it take to change the model to support the cases that need to be covered?
It will take like a couple of months, I think. I think we only started working on the simulator.
I had down that simulator was done.
If this new information, Christina, like they didn't cover all the cases for connection state tracking, so that's not done anymore. So we need to have like another item for this to make sure that we're tracking.
Well, we have connection tracking here in the compiler dependent on the simulator.
Yeah, simulator is not done.
Oh, I thought when we had done the...
Yeah, we have item number 6 is connection tracking in the simulator.
Yeah, yep.
So we are doing that.
Yeah,
right so here. We're going to need dates for it.
Right, that's why we're here in the meeting. To hand out.
I'm just making the point, Christina, that using the PMA model was like new. Like we agreed on a different approach, which is okay because that was a temporary agreement. But then we moved to PMA model, so we need to all be aware of that.
Okay.
And what the ramifications are on the schedule.
Gerard, what is the model you were talking about from the Linux community?
In the last meeting we had Don Fingerhut, who came on and he's been sending emails and pull requests. And what he did was he came on and said, this is connection tracking from the Linux open source community. And
John Carney.
Or John Carney.
Yeah, Open Contrail.
Yeah, so provided that code, and it was very, very complete. And it was a matter of, okay, if we have code that's tried and true and we know works because it's been around for a long time, then we can convert that to P4, and that's where we left off. Since then, there's been a different agreement to use a different model, and I'm okay with that. What my point is, I want the community to be aware of it because there was a fair number of people in the last meeting, and we've changed direction. So if this is a good direction, I'm fine with it, but I also need the dates and need everybody to be aware that we've changed direction.
We didn't change direction from the last meeting. We changed direction from the very beginning, when I mean, basically from the model that was initially posted.
Yeah, the model that initially posted is a skeleton of a model. It's not a complete model by any stretch. And I think that was what the community was saying. It's not a complete model.
Right.
That's the model that was adopted, right?
You know, there's no adoption of it. We're developing it real time, right? Community always comes in after that and says it's missing this, it's missing that, and that's what happened. And as we address those, of course, those things that it's missing need to be addressed, and some of them are like, as you just said, may take a couple months. So it's not a matter of this is what we adopted. That was a rough, and it was always said that is a first proposed draft of the first P4 model, and now we still have a lot of work to do.
Mhm.
But as I always say to all my people, please submit what you have. You got to start somewhere, and that's what happened. They started somewhere. Now we need to finish the work.
Right. Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that you're right. That's not adopted. That was not the right term. That's the model that we used as a starting point. Now we are just saying we use a slightly different starting point, but that's the announcement we have to do to the community. It has not to do with the open contrail.
Can we still use the snippet of code from Open Contrail to close connections?
Now, I think what we've agreed here is if we're going to use this P4 model that sort of is in existence, then the action item is to at least compare it to the contrail model to make sure that it's actually not another skeleton of an implementation, but it's actually covering all the cases that the contrail code covers. That's the action out of this.
Right.
So Gerald,
yeah, perfect. And that's not diverging from what was said yesterday. We just use a different starting point, but the goal is the same. So we haven't really changed direction as far as making sure that everything that's in Open Contrail is going to be included.
Yeah. So the action item here, though, is to put the line in. Right? We have to compare the two models and make sure that the P4 model is at least as good as the contrail model, covers all the same cases or more, right? That's the action, because somebody has to go analyze that.
so Gerald, one quick question. So irrespective of use the PMA model or whatever the model we are following today, the SAI API is not going to change, right? The what is going to change is how we get the API and how we load it to the simulator is what
I don't think the SAI. I don't think the SAI changes. It changes the behavioral model, right? So, the SAI is like half the battle, right? Not even half the battle. The behavioral model is the battle, and then that's why we agreed that we'll compile size out of the behavioral model. So we need the behavioral model correct.
Right.
And the SAI, I agree. Maybe it'll spit out the same SAI, but the object itself will change. Right?
Okay.
It'll be much more complete.
Yeah, I think we once we analyze that PNA thing, and if that is complete, I think we can migrate to that model from whatever we are defining that behavior model right today.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Gerald, just for clarity, so the comparison between going with the contrail model versus the Panzando model is, if we go with the contrail model, we still have to write new P4 files to have all the cases covered in it, whereas the Panzando model already has the P4 files that implements this. We just need to make sure it covers all the cases. Is that
yeah,
correct?
That's exactly it. I don't have a problem with it going to the Panzando model at all. What I just would have a problem if we don't compare and make sure that what we have found out over the last 2 weeks was what we had was incomplete. So we know there's open source and we know it's tried and true. So what we don't want to do is lose sight of that and not do this comparison, because then we'll just go through this whole exercise of why did this not work? Why did that not work? Like, so at least we know. So the only action out of this is not to change anything you're doing. It sounds good. I'm glad Panzando is actually contributing that.
Yeah,
let's just
awesome.
do the comparison and make sure that we're covering all the bases. If we are, no problem. We just keep moving on. If we aren't, then we're going to have to update the model.
Is that going to be Mario and Marian then doing the comparison?
So
sure.
Can I suggest?
What? Go ahead.
Can I suggest something here?
Sure.
So I think we just became aware of this contrail only like a day or two ago, right? See, I think that gave additional details about how efficiently we can track connections, age them so that the flow state doesn't bloat, right? That is good, but it's a software implementation. What I suggest is if we could give another day or two for a few more of us who have done hardware implementations in the past to review, and then and then we can I don't know if adopt is again the right word, but to kind of say that, hey, this is the model for flow tracking, flow state reduction, and then we can go definitely and go look at either compare or enhance the existing PNA code to the next level. I see it as, Gerald, the way I see it is a continuous improvement, which is good. But I think point is taken in terms of what you are saying, right? If we have 2-3 of them, they will conflict. But at least if you give us a couple of more days, I think it's my suggestion is to look at the open control model from a hardware implementation point of view and multiple implementations that will evolve over a period of time.
I agree with you, Venkat, right? So that is a software-based implementation. We need to look at it from the hardware perspective and the pipelines perspective, right? Some things may not be achievable.
But at the same time, guys, do we not need to first really come up with the model with all this basically, requirements that we have for Dash requirement purposes for the connection tracking, making sure that it covers all the bases before we take it to the P4 community, where it can be discussed with respect to the PNA architecture, to say that, okay, what are the modification or what are any enhancement that you're suggesting to them, right? So I think there is some dependency that I see, that first we have to really come up with something and then start engaging with the P4 community.
That's the second part of it, right? Right now, you have to first identify the pipelines. Then if you see that anything new, then you can go back to the P4 architectural group and then ask them to implement it, right? The first step is to identify the pipeline and is there anything new required, right? And then, as I agree with Venkat on that is Contrail is a software implementation, and then we need to look at from the hardware perspective and the pipeline perspective what can be done. The Panzando PMA model could be a good place to start with, but I don't know who it was Baldi Mario who talked about it. Is there a place where we can look at that?
There is
it's in the PR. Yeah.
Sorry.
Which PR was? It's in Dash
21,
PRs.
I think.
Yes. It's in the much of the early PRs. If you if you go down, scroll down. Yeah, here it is.
Mario Balzi.
Okay. Thank you. I will.
So on the P4, right? On the P4 and the versioning, right? I think we had one P4 specification from Marian. That was good. And then when I think I remember everyone talking about why not align it with PNA, because there's a lot of work and a lot of expertise there. I think that was, I will say it as we agreed on and said, and then Mario took and enhanced it. But since PNA itself is evolving, it's not a bad idea. Again, I suggest we could start with the current PNA and then we continue. And then whatever enhancements either PNA or P4 needs to, we can go back. So I think what we're doing is this incremental agreements and then moving forward. So I don't know, Hanif, does that?
I kind of like that agreement, but it doesn't change what we need to do. People still need to go back and look at it, re-look at it in parallel, re-examine the contrail, re-examine, whether this actually works for hardware. That can be done in parallel, and you could still agree that today, it seems like using the PMA model as a starting point is a good starting point. And I don't think we need to debate that. It's whether it needs to be updated and enhanced would be definitely a debate for the future after people continue to do more work. What I do like about the PMA model that they're proposing is it has been deployed. So it's not like, and it has been deployed against services like this. So I feel like it's at least a good starting point.
Okay, I think, we are in.
So Gerald, one more question is like, we have a participation from Panzando, right? I don't know if they can, because they know what they are doing in PNA, and we can, if we can get some, clarity from them, then we'll see how complete that is for us to use in behavioral model, right? That will help us. Instead
I
of
didn't see the whole crew here. I thought that Mario was on here. So
Mario's on, yeah. Mario was on.
Panzando.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's from Panzando.
Okay, then we will know what exactly. He's also participating in Dash, so we know what exactly we can leverage from the contract.
Yeah, I believe Mario was the one who. Did you do the pull request, Mario?
No.
Yes.
Or was it Mario? Let me see. Yeah, you did.
Yes.
You did.
Yeah. So he's on here. You can always consult with him.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and anytime.
Venkat's here too. Okay. Great. Okay. So do we have to wait for all of these other work items? Is everything dependent on this comparison?
No, no,
Okay,
I think you have a starting point here.
Okay. Yep.
The comparison should be to enhance if it needs to be enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
The PMA model, should that be required?
Right.
Or
Well,
if we find that it's hard to implement in hardware, you know, we can always debate these things forever, but I don't think I think it's okay to start with the PMA model. One, it's kind of also a tried and true model. And two, you know, it's much better than where we are today. Right? Today, we don't cover any of these bases. So I think it's a good place to start. There's some tried to trueness to it. I think it is agreed by the people on this call that in parallel, we need to go off and look at this and make sure in parallel that it doesn't need to be enhanced and or, you know, it doesn't, you know, worst case, it doesn't even satisfy our requirements. I highly doubt that. So I think it's more about enhancing potentially to cover, you know, a case that it didn't account for.
right. And I recall back when we were talking in December about whether if we were wanting to bring changes forward to the PNA working group and how long it took to get changes, et cetera. Like we had talked about doing that back in December.
Nobody offered us this code last December, so this was offered this week.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let's move forward, Marian, if we can. And we've got basically Mario, Marian, and Venkat offering to look at this. Is that right?
Yeah, we can do that in parallel. That point taken, that hardware based, and it gives us a little more time also.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the most important thing here, Marian, that we need to start working on? Or
yes, so actually what we think is the most important and most blocking thing, we are already working on that. This is support for the connection tracking in the simulator and in compiler. So because we need to start somewhere, we need to be able to run at least something. That's what we are doing. Then of course there is UDP and IPv6 which can be done independently.
okay, great.
So they don't really they don't need anything else. They can be done on its own. They have support from software. Just need to be coded in the in our P4 behavioral model.
So are you saying that Mellanox is going to do that, or you want anybody else?
He's asking for volunteer.
Yeah, I'm saying that we are working on the simulator to so we can actually run connection tracking, and everything else is not right now on the table for us.
Right. So NVIDIA is assigned here and here and here and here. And so UDP support, we would need a volunteer and IPv6.
Yeah, can I take UDP support and then there are some questions we'll have, Marian, in terms of how to do it. I know it's generic software, it's all C++, but there may be some questions in terms of the environment, whatnot, and we need to come up with mechanism on how that information is disseminated to the rest.
So this is more in the BMV2, right? BMV2 side, correct? Not the P4
it's just P4. You don't really need to change anything in BMV2.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, if it is just P4, okay. It's just okay. I think clarifying what is need to be done. If it is rewriting P4 code and I think what I'm saying is if we could take this list and start adding additional details. If you think we should do offline, I'm okay. I'll keep quiet. But at least putting 3 to 5 bullets under each of them will give us more clarity. The reason I'm saying is I have experience with the P4C code directly. I have changed it, coded it. I have directly coded the behavioral models also, that C++. So I think
we have items like that as well.
Yeah, so I think mapping to those will help at least me give you less time, but be more productive, right? That's a reason to say, let's put a little more detail here if we can.
So what I'm going to do, guys, is when we get off the phone, Michael Miele and I will create this list in the proper spot in the dash repo, and then we will publish it out to you guys, and then you can let us know what you need. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So who wants IPv6 then?
So probably I would need to provide details, description for every of the task. And
Yes.
Yeah, that would be
everyone
better
can
because
volunteer.
these things are very generic, Marian. I don't know what to commit.
You mean we just can't pull a snippet of code from the internet and throw it in there?
If we know
Just
which
kidding.
snippet.
Just kidding.
No. So
Kidding.
what, Christina, what we are trying to understand is what is, when we say IP support, it again just the .p4 support, or is there anything much?
Yeah,
we
it's just
that's
P4,
all.
so
Those are the
just
things
P4.
we are looking for, so that we can commit to what is asked here, right? So we can go back and see where can we help you guys out.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
we
so
need
Christina, when this will be available, I will provide comments for every item.
Okay. Yeah, Michael
So
and
do we
I
need
should.
to just assign leads though? Like we're all saying, go back to NVIDIA. I mean, should there not be at least, if somebody can at least help scope what needs to get done to get the lines in here, then maybe we just get the leads for that. And then we can reassign if they're not the right person to do all the work, we can add more people. But I don't want it to end up we're all just waiting on NVIDIA. Like we should have the people here at least taking leadership, and then if they're not the ones to code in the end because they've identified other areas, it's fine. But I don't want to leave this all on NVIDIA.
No, definitely. That's why I think all of us are volunteering. I think if we know, all we are saying is we need at least 3 to 5 bullets under each one of them. Either we could do it right now,
Okay.
or we could, really, go offline. Either way is okay.
I have some time. I can do it now if you guys want.
I have a next meeting in 15 minutes, so
Okay.
but I can provide a description in like a couple of hours after I'm done with my stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, Christina,
Yeah, so-
we can do that offline.
Okay. So, Marian, do you need me and Michael to help write the descriptions once we provide the
Yeah.
framework, or do you want to do it yourself once I give you a link?
Yeah, just a link. I will do it myself.
Okay. All right.
And I can reply to this meeting notifying everyone.
And then I
Wonderful.
think if you reply, then people can jump in.
Yeah.
The real goal would be after that's done and you reply and everybody sees it, that
Yeah.
people start being assigned to some areas
Right.
here so that we can move.
Right. And what I really do need is everybody's GitHub username, because that's how I can assign things. So because we are in GitHub, and I know quite a few of you, but if you could just throw it in the chat window, I could copy them down.
Yeah. And one more request from my end, right? So can you please keep us in loop, myself and Venkat, in part of the PMA model discussion?
Yeah.
Keep
you in the
We
loop,
have
meaning...
2 Venkats in the call, so this is different Venkat.
Yeah, Venkat Mahalingam from Dell. So myself and Venkat are from Dell.
Keep you in the loop, meaning what do you mean?
In the sense that no, because initially the ask was us to take a look at connection tracking, right? If this is going to be based on, that's what we are looking at currently. If that is what it is, so we want to be in, because if you are going to pick up the connection tracking from Dell, and that's what I just want to be in the discussion for this one.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Then Dell, I got it. Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll go clean this up offline. Yeah.
We just need to start using
after my real
Venkat
job.
So Christina, we have multiple Venkat, so we'll start adding Venkat P for me, Venkat Pulela, and then so
Venkat M for me.
So this one's going to be Venkat.
I have hardware experience.
Yes, Venkat P.
Venkat P, and if Venkat M is also needed, maybe then we can.
Did Venkat M want to be on this one too?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, thank you for volunteering. That's awesome. I appreciate it. So, anything else for today? Then,
can we?
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And then I was saying I'm just still on the last topic, right? So, do you want us to initiate is Mario is going to initiate a meeting for this to discuss this in a couple of days once we review this open contract as well as Mario's.
I can let you guys do it if you want to, or Mario, do you want to initiate the meeting, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, Yeah, I would. I just don't know who is interested in participating. Of course, Venkat and Marian and myself. But if anyone else is interested, drop me an email and I will include you in the invite.
Does everyone know Mario's email? It should have been in this Teams invite today. It's baldi@panzando.io.
Yeah, we'll reach out to Mario and then we'll schedule. So we just need a couple of days to review the connection, open contrail, as well as the PNA pull request from Mario.
Okay.
So then we can have this. We can start the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you 3 business days. Okay. Just kidding. We're not working weekends. Okay. Anything else, guys, for today then? And so Michael and I will map this over to the original repo and work with, send a link to Marian. Marian will populate what he needs to, and then I'll send you all, I'll reply to this meeting thread with the information. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
That sounds
Okay.
good, Christine.
Right. All right, Joe. Any final comments, or are we good for the day?
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your leadership, Marian and Gerald. Thank you for coming, and appreciate everyone. I'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.